When Did the Attention Seeker Go Too Far? Viewer Edition. Story 1. My former roommate and former friend. Literally everything she did and said was for attention. Like, it was unbelievable. I didn't realize this until I moved in with her, but I slowly started realizing that she lives for attention. She had a St. Bernard, sweetest dog you'll ever meet. Up until I lived there, you wouldn't think that dog was the center of her universe. You would think that dog was the center of her universe, but once you're there, you realize she didn't give a crap about that dog. Never walked him, bathed him, played with him, took him for walks, or even talked to him really. Nothing. He just sat around in the hall, laying on the floor, hoping for a scrap of attention, so I would always stop and rub his belly and my foot and give him pets. I realized she only got that dog because St. Bernards will immediately draw attention. And draw attention he did. She would use any opportunity to post her face on social media somewhere, like in random Facebook comments that have nothing to do with it. One time I posted a picture of my new driver's license with the veteran designation on it, so in the comments, she posted her own driver's license saying, "I get discounts too. I'm not military, I'm just cute," and then proceeded to make her own post about it saying the exact same thing. Mind you, she wasn't exactly a looker. She wasn't really attractive in any of the conventional ways that someone would be attractive. But despite this, and because of all her Facebook friends enabling her attention-seeking, she was in love with herself. She once cosplayed as Selena Quintanilla and posted a picture of herself next to Selena saying she looked like her, and I laughed. But for her hat trick, she bought a effing house, using whatever government assistance she could find, all so she could have that sappy dramatic story about how she drove to Arizona with nothing but her clothes and her car and lived in a shelter and look how far she's come and blah, blah, blah. She made a video with sad music and the whole nine. Now, the reason I say she bought this house for attention is because she couldn't afford to pay for it. She absolutely had to have at least one roommate in order to make ends meet. So when she deliberately started being crappy to my dog, causing me to immediately move out with little notice, she scrambled to find another roommate. So she moved a complete stranger into her home where her autistic son lived, all because she can't afford it alone. To recap, this woman got a dog and a house, all for attention, fully knowing that she wasn't prepared for the responsibility of either one. And oh, did she milk it like a cow when the dog died. This dog she didn't give two craps about, and once left outside in 37-degree weather while she went to her room and had awkward intercourse with her boyfriend and didn't come back to check on him for 3 hours. I let the dog in after 20 minutes when I realized he was out there. But this girl didn't bother for hours. She's the worst kind of person, and everyone who knows her thinks she is the best kind of person, except for one friend I had who always saw her for what she was. Thank God for that friend, LOL. I thought I was crazy. I've got to say, I feel like some of the core of the problem where getting people like this is social media. I feel like when we're on social media, it should be, like, especially for Facebook and stuff, it's to stay connected with friends and family and to, share little moments of your life. But it's become this competition for likes, or not even a competition, like the site. It just gets you addicted to that kind of stuff. And for some people, more and more of this stuff just becomes for show. I'm not immune to this. I've certainly posted stuff just to get likes and for show and everything. And yeah, I feel like social media just kind of does that to us. So not excusing this woman's behavior and everything, just think I might see where it is coming from. Story 2. Sorry in advance for this novel. I didn't know her well, glad I didn't, to be honest, but in elementary and middle school, there was a girl in my grade named Paulina. Short, reasonably pretty, developed early, popular. I saw her parents once at a parents' night, and they seemed very rich and very cold. It kind of made sense why she acted out on occasion and was usually a bit more cozy than an 8th grader should have been with the boys in our grade. 2 specific instances of her come to mind. 1. In 6th grade, about age 11 to 12 for those not in the U.S., my family went on a small vacation to a city in the next state over that had a location of a nationwide theme park chain. Rhymes with Pricks Brags. While there, I got my first pentagram necklace. My older sister had been reading about paganism, and I had rejected the mainstream church years prior. I wore that thing constantly, and no one really cared, till we started talking about the Salem witch trials in class. The attention I got was so uncomfortable, but she went one step further one day, running up to me in the hallway and showing me a pentagram ring she had gotten, saying, "We can be witches and cast spells together." It was so transparent and so cringe. 2. At the time, our town went to the next town over for high school. At the end of 8th grade, so we're about 14 to 15 at this point, we were all bussed over there for a tour and kind of pre-orientation. Our grade was broken into groups, about 20 per, and led around by a senior there. I think the ROTC program took charge since more than one of the guides were in uniform. Paulina was in my group. Most of us are just taking in the tour, basic questions and whatnot. I think our guide half joked about how students weren't allowed to eat lunch in the courtyard anymore since people were caught smoking weed there a few times. Paulina proceeds to ask if anyone's ever been caught in the closet effing. It was so awkward, and I don't even remember what the guide's response was. No one laughed or really acknowledged it. At another point in the tour, the guide was talking about different electives, extracurriculars, etc. that were open to us. I think this was over 15 years ago. And she proceeds to chime in with, "My hobby is effing." I forget if this was before or after the previous one mentioned, pretty sure it was after. Again, awkward silence and no recognition. Thankfully, she didn't go for the third time's the charm approach. I have no idea what really became of her since a lot of kids from my middle school went on to different high schools than I did. Some moved, some were sent to private schools. There are a lot of private schools around here. From what I heard, she ended up at a local Catholic school that a lot of kids in my grade did, including one of my best friends. That sucked. Rumor has it, she was caught doing the nasty on more than one occasion in closets with guys and girls. If that's what she wanted, that's her choice, but maybe not on school grounds, especially a Catholic school. I hope she's okay and has sought some level of therapy. She's still a person, after all. Hey, I appreciate that you wish this person well and hope that they've gotten some therapy and stuff, because, yeah, sometimes people are acting out, and especially in those younger years where you're figuring yourself out, I can understand it a little bit more, but it is something that can take some effort to kind of work out of. So, hopefully she's okay. And hopefully any of you who've struggled with stuff are okay too. Story 3. I had a friend who was so narcissistic she convinced herself that her half-baked opinions were hard facts and her bald-faced lies were irrefutable truth. Let's call her Molly. She was the epitome of an overgrown middle school mean girl who never threw out the adolescent bully mindset. When I met her, she was in her 40s, had 2 kids, and was on her way to being a grandmother. Molly craved attention in every way possible. She just could not stand anyone else being in charge, being in the spotlight, or getting praise for something they worked hard for. If she wasn't getting the attention, she would do anything she could to usurp that moment or ruin it. The whole "if I can't have it, no one will" attitude. I learned very quickly in order to tell her something in confidence because it would never stay between us. In addition to lying about being abused by her stepmother as a child, that her older brother had violated her, she also claimed she had cancer, that her boyfriend after her first marriage disintegrated had abused her, then kicked her out when she was states away from family with nowhere to go. She also claimed that her second husband was abusing her but wouldn't leave him because she had nowhere to go. I later found out it was all a lie, every single word. She got a rush out of sharing things that were none of her business to spread around and being what I refer to as a grief Nazi. If she couldn't gossip about something real, she would make things up. She spread an entirely untrue rumor that I caught an STI from a one-night stand, outed me to my extremely conservative, homophobic Italian Roman Catholic father, and when I admonished her for that, I went low contact, she flipped her lid. When my father died from cancer, she got so mad that I wasn't talking to her anymore. She was pouting because I wasn't talking to her anymore and had the nerve to say, but didn't think I'd find out about it, "Well, they never got along anyway." She called me up and not so subtly tried to snoop around to see if I had heard what she had said. I had. She tried to make excuses for it, and I told her she was damn lucky she was, at that point, living several states away because I would have driven over and beaten her butt in front of her husband. That terrified her. We're not friends anymore. Story 4. In math class, there was this girl who'd always be talking with her two friends. It was so bad that my teacher would often imitate her laughter because of how much they'd have to listen to it as they explained. Anyway, my math teacher was fed up and made her sit on the opposite side of the class for the entire class, which wasn't very long. And the opposite side of the class is right where my friends and I sit. She hates me for being bisexual and for not being depressed. Anyway, for like 30 minutes, she's just ranting about how horrible her spot is and being all dramatic. I'm getting pretty effing peed, and the teacher tried to keep his cool. He's a nice person and doesn't do anything. But then, one of my friends just randomly came up to me with a mini box of Cheerios, except it had water in it. He placed it by my desk. I'm confused and give it back to him while passing by the dramatic girl's desk. She goes, "Ew, you're spilling it on the floor. Go put it in the trash," which is on the other side of the classroom. I ask my friend what the F this is and gave it back to him. I go back to my desk and I'm just confused and a bit irritated. And then the dramatic girl just starts berating and criticizing, saying that I'm disgusting and that I should have thrown it in the trash, and generally just blames it all on me. She blows up at the end of the class and leaves with one of her little minions that she calls friends. Her friend comes back and tells the teacher that the dramatic girl had a panic attack. Nobody ever did crap to her, and I guess that was a bit too much for her. Story 5. Oh man, the acid kid story reminds me of my own stupidity back in high school. One day, I decided I was going to skip my last couple of classes to take some acid and go home, so I took the acid during lunch. Big mistake. Turns out I had planned this on a day they were doing some assignment outside for the agriculture class, so I couldn't sneak out of the school without being seen like I wanted to. So there I am, 3 tabs of acid rapidly kicking in, on the way to chemistry class. The first part of class was rough. I was just sitting there blanked out, staring at a wall while the teacher explained the assignment. Eventually, we were let loose to work on the assignment, but of course I had no idea what was going on. I just stared around the room giggling at stuff only I could see. The teacher was becoming very suspicious. I wasn't exactly popular, more of a class clown, but nobody disliked me, and everyone knew who I was, and that saved my butt that day. One of the cheerleaders, a girl I had never directly spoken to and had a reputation for being a huge bee, took my hand and led me back to her lab area, sat me down at her laptop, and turned on some kids' movies. I think it was Zootopia or something. She gave me a bag of Skittles and told me to just be quiet and watch the movie. She even filled out my lab sheet for me so I wouldn't fail the assignment. Yeah, turns out her reputation for being a bee was complete nonsense, generated by less popular/attractive girls who were jealous. One of the sweetest people I've ever met. We are still great friends to this day. 2 really great lessons from this story. First off, yeah, you can't always trust, rumors and reputations that people have. Sometimes those are unfounded, and people with a bad rep can actually be really cool. And the second lesson that we've learned from this is real friends will help you get through a bad high or a high in a bad place. Not that any of you should be getting high. Don't do anything illegal now. I have to say that. But, yeah, real friends are there for you in those kind of moments, and I'm glad that you found that friend. Story 6. Not a child, an adult I met online. To preface, she and I were basically children when we met online, roughly around 16 to 19 years old, but she didn't show how much of a red flag she was in real life until we hit our early to mid-20s. I've spoken about her before for what she did to a mutual friend of ours who had a crush on her. I used to roleplay with her and some other online friends. When we would just talk about something that wasn't about this girl, she would bring up her deceased mother to draw sympathy from the group to the point that it got really grating. Every time we spoke of something that had no appeal to her, you'd always see her username with the following text, "Mum." She would block me at one point for something unrelated, but unblock me as if she held some kind of moral superiority over me for why I was blocked. She would eventually unblock me again, and we'd stay friends until the night of an MCM Comic-Con in London one October. She would sit on our friend's lap, let him touch her, then turn to him to tell him she actually didn't like him romantically, before getting off him and leaving him stunned and heartbroken. I wouldn't drop it because she deserved to be reminded until she blocked me for good. The kicker? This friend unfriended me to keep the peace with this girl, as he put it. I really know who to trust, don't I? Story 7. I just remembered one. When I was about 14, my best friend, at the time we are no longer friends, told me she was upset because she had an argument with one of her friends over the weekend. Why? Because she posted a picture to Snapchat of her wrist where she had followed a makeup tutorial to fake self-harm just to see how people would react. And when her friend reached out to her concerned, she got very angry when she found out it was faked and told her that's not the kind of thing you should fake, and they had an argument about it. And she expected me to be on her side. And then there was also my other friend who would lie and talk crap behind everyone's back to try and drive me away from them so I would only hang out with her. But she was a terrible liar, so I never believed her. Lies include one of my other friends had bullied her, also that she made her stick her foot in mud with glass in it and licked it, that she had a famous YouTube channel where she faked a British accent, that she had a friend who died of cancer, and that she had a guitar personally signed by One Direction, etc., etc. Hey folks, little content warning, the next 2 stories actually do have some discussion about self-harm and taking one's own life, and so if you are uncomfortable with that, just try and skip to the time code that my editors hopefully put on screen for you right here. Thanks so much. Story 8. I have a friend who's a hypochondriac. We were better friends last year, more like she was a lot more clingy, but these days she has other friends who feed into her constant illnesses, crying, and K-pop bullcrap. Anyway, last year she came up to me in the hall during the passing period and said, "I'm disappointed in myself." I asked why, and she shows me her arm where she scratched herself. I tried to self-harm because of a panic attack last hour. She says, literally smiling in an oopsie-doopsie sort of way. I have to get to class, so I walk away. This continues to fester in my head due to my little brother trying the same thing just a few nights ago. Later during lunch, she goes around showing our group of friends. I turn away and start crying. She asks what's wrong, and I go off on her for obviously faking it. I've dealt with enough people doing genuine and fake self-harm to know the difference. She's not done it since, from what I know. It really, really bugs me when there are people who are using, self-harm for attention. But I will always say to folks, report that stuff for their own safety, because sometimes maybe even if you think that it is just for attention, maybe it's not. Maybe it is a cry for attention based on real tendencies. And if it's not, if it really just is for attention and being kind of crappy, then they're going to get called out on that stuff. But better safe than sorry in those instances. But please, folks, please don't use something that serious just to get some attention. It is, A, it's just immoral, and B, if you are found out, that is going to be a reputation that sticks with you and colors you in a pretty bad light. And I don't think you want that. Story 9. It was my best friend for about 2 years, and they were the type where they would constantly say they'd commit game over all the time, at least once a month like clockwork, and sent out mass texts to people saying life isn't worth living, I'd be better off dead, and then ghost them after so they didn't have to answer their questions and own up. They would also lock themselves in my bathroom to cry and would cut themselves whenever nobody was giving them enough attention, and even did it at work and got sent home. It got even worse when their boyfriend came over and they threw more fits and would lock themselves in a room every time and waited for someone to come and coax them out. They also had a habit of pretending like they were helpless and that they didn't understand simple common sense, so people would take pity on them and purposely do certain things that they knew peed me off, so they would get me to yell at them and then claim I was scary and a big bully. I wondered if maybe their parents or someone wasn't giving them enough attention at home, but no, they had an overbearing Karen for a mom, so I don't know, honestly, like they are 23 now and way too old for this. Story 10. My own experience of an attention getter was in 7th grade, and this new girl arrived. My acquaintance Kat warned me to not be sympathetic to her at all, and I'm glad she told me that. First instance was when a new girl and her friend staged a fight in the student intersection, and it was a convincing catfight. Hair was pulled out of my scalp, scratches everywhere, busted lip, broken nose, bites, and all. The second instance was on a hot summer day, and the teacher let us play outside since we did well in class. New girl comes outside, and about 20 minutes pass, and she fakes having a heat stroke. We all knew it was fake because her friends weren't helping her. They didn't even call for help, but laughed at her dumb butt. A teacher saw the scene and called an ambulance, and the ambulance came and took her away. Story 11. A housemate, 18 female, that I, 22 female, had was the typical make crap up for attention type when it came to her little group of best friends. One night, she claimed on Facebook to them all that I was keeping her awake by boinking my boyfriend too loudly in the next room. She forgot that I was her Facebook friend. I publicly replied, pointing out that I was on night shift as an EMT, so she should call the police because that's not me in the house. All her friends laughed at her for being caught out, and she lied further, saying that it happens most nights. I pointed out that my boyfriend actually lives 150 miles away, so we only see each other every 2 weeks. Her friends laughed even harder at her, and she was super angry at me for about a month for showing her up in front of her friends. I'll never understand why folks will post stuff on their Facebook that are just lies for attention about people who see their Facebook. Because this kind of stuff happens. People make up crap and are immediately called out on it. And it's like, I mean, yeah, you're going to get attention now, but it's going to be a pretty bad kind. Do you really want that? Also, I'm going to just lump this in here, but people who go on Facebook and post super passive-aggressive crap, like not naming the person, but knowing that the person who sees it is going to understand it, don't do that. Just be an adult and talk to the person, okay? Story 12. So I went to a rather posh school, and the kids were generally very well behaved. It's an all-girls school. One day we were having some boys from a nearby boys' school over for socializing, and we put on some performances like dancing, singing, etc. This really mean girl who's a bit older than me had this dance performance, and it was to a K-pop song. She was really good at dancing, but it was a very promiscuous dance, like hip shaking, naughty connotations in the song, etc. Then, midway through the dance, she took off her shirt. Now, if she were just wearing a sports bra, it would be fine, but she wore an almost see-through lace bra. It was almost like she was completely topless. This isn't a very crazy story, but in a sheltered, posh school like mine, this was scandalous. Story 13. I literally knew a person who did similar things as Story 3 in the original video to one of my friends and accused her of abuse. It was a really ugly situation, and I'm so relieved that my friend had evidence that she was falsely being framed for abuse. Later we found out that not only did she falsely accuse my friend, but falsely accused another person and threatened her boyfriend as well. The scariest part for me is that she managed to manipulate the school we were in into trusting her and multiple students who used to be my friend's friend into hating her. I wish I could expose her, but honestly, she just scares me, and I know if I ever try it, she would somehow manage to manipulate enough people into bullying me and everything. Till this day, though, the person still holds to this day that they were abused and constantly plays the victim about the situation and about how people should have supported her even though she lied. Story 14. I went to high school with a compulsive liar who was always telling me about health issues she supposedly had. I cut her some slack. I figured having to become the second mother to a toddler-aged brother who got more attention from her mom, whom she never really bonded with because she had her when she herself was still in high school, than she probably ever did. It was her coping mechanism. But when she told me she had pancreatic cancer, which my pap was recovering from after receiving a single-digit % chance of surviving more than 1 year, I drew the line and gently but firmly cut her off. She eventually started therapy through the school's counseling program. Last I heard, she was living on her own in another state and making a name for herself as a tattoo artist, so I'm glad she seems to be doing well. Hopefully she continued therapy and stopped compulsive lying for others and her own sake. Story 15. I attended a party one time that was composed of around 20-ish people. We were an online group from the same area that had met up at one of the members' homes to socialize and geek out about our common interests. In attendance was a girl who a lot of the members knew, but she was new to the group. About halfway through the night, she decided that she's bored and the absolute best idea comes to her: get completely naked. Since the group was full of single guys, out came the cameras. She struck a variety of lewd poses for her fans while the rest of us tried to ignore what was going on. The group never had any more social gatherings after that, and it's still a cringe story we tell sometimes. This is a complicated one because I'm assuming from the text it sounds like you're all adults. She's an adult who can make decisions and everything, and I mean, but I can't see why that would be a good decision to make. And folks, taking pictures, I know that she's like posing for them and stuff, but still, if you're in a big group meetup, like if she had been drinking or something, that kind of calls consent into question. I don't know, but probably best to avoid this unless everyone in the group seems to be fully on board, because that is not a story that'll age well with time, probably. Story 16. Concerning Story 8 from the original video, you can have sympathy for whatever led the person to that point, but still go, they are dangerous to be around and need to take control of themselves before this gets worse. I am distancing myself for my own safety. Heck, in my case, I have PTSD and many other disorders that make emotional regulation an issue at times, along with unmedicated severe depression. I've gotten way better now that I'm on the right meds, but even during that time, I have understood if somebody, even if they showed a ton of sympathy for me, would want to not associate with me. I didn't want to associate with me at times. Story 17. I knew this girl who would say she got pregnant every year, and she even came to me and her other friends that a boy choked her. Her throat wasn't red, just the same pale color her throat was always. To make it worse, the middle school principal, we were in 8th grade when she claimed to be choked by a boy, was less than 8 feet away from us. She told us to not tell the school principal and ushered out of the loud cafeteria. Story 18. I went to uni with a compulsive liar. She said she had terminal cancer among other alleged illnesses. One year I shaved my head in support of her to help raise money for cancer relief in the UK. Found out a week later, she lied about it. But hey, at least my hair was donated to a charity to make wigs for kids with cancer, so some good came out of it. She also claimed to speak Gaeilge, Irish, so I tried talking to her in Irish, but she flat out ignored me. Weird. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.